Where my character died in Power was where Courtney wanted to kill Omari. She had been wrote the theme Ghost Must Die. She just hated him. She just wanted to get rid of him. Like, I was like, no, leave him. Like, I went in the spot that she wanted to kill him. Because she was like, well, something big has to happen. I was like, knock me off.
Now, how was Ghost originally supposed to be killed off? Because according to 50 Cent, he was actually supposed to be killed off back in Power Season 5. When we saw Kanan's death, originally Corny Kemp had the idea of killing Ghost, until 50 Cent stepped in and said, nah, keep him alive. But had they gone through what they originally planned? Had they gone ahead with killing Ghost towards the end of Season 5? How would that have changed Power Season 6, and also the landscape of the Power universe? Now this follows on from my last breakdown about Eddie O'Neill. For those who may not have caught my last breakdown, Eddie O'Neill was the original character before they changed his name to Tommy Egan, along with a few more, let's just say, gruesome things. But after I finished that particular breakdown, it kind of got me thinking about alternate storylines for Ghost, and there's no better alternate to dig into than the one that's been confirmed by 50 Cent himself. Ghost was supposed to be killed off towards the end of Season 5. So, in this particular breakdown, we're going to be running through those 50 Cent quotes. We're then going to be running through exactly the ending of Season 5 in terms of what they wrote. And then we're going to get to the fun part. What if they actually stuck with Ghost's death in Season 5? How would that have changed the rest of Power? How would it have shifted the story arcs for the likes of Tommy, Tasha, and even characters like Angela Valdez and Joe Proctor, and especially Tariq? And finally, how would it have changed the landscape of the entire Power universe?
I was like, no, leave him. Like, I went in the spot that she wanted to kill him. Because she was like, well, something big has to happen. I was like, knock me off. I got other shit to do. Like, I can go do 50 Cent things.
Now, these quotes from 50 Cent actually come from a podcast he did not too long ago. Around 7 months ago, he did a podcast with Your Welcome Network with Mr. Cameron. In the interview, 50 Cent mentioned that Ghost was supposed to be killed off when Kanan Stark was. 50 actually went into specifics where Courtney Kemp gave him a note while they were on set. Omari Hardwick lost it and she hated him. She just wanted to kill his character off. But 50 Cent probably knew the show can't go on without Ghost, at least not OG Power. Without James St. Patrick, OG Power just isn't Power, and he probably recognized that, which is why he probably turned around and said, why don't you just kill me instead? He's got other businesses to run, TV shows to produce, and just do whatever 50 does, go on tour or whatever 50 has on his schedule. And I do think it was the right call, because looking back at Power 5 years on, if Ghost wasn't a part of Season 6, which was probably my least favourite season out of them all, it probably wouldn't have felt like Power. It would have felt like something was missing, that spark, the character that started everything, the character that the show centered around for 5 seasons. But that's the original plan Courtney Kemp had in mind, was killing Ghost towards the end of Season 5. Now just before we get to the what if scenario of Ghost being killed, let's remind ourselves of what they actually wrote, what they actually gave as Power fans in terms of the ending for Power Season 5. Now, towards the end of Season 5, the Ray Ray murder created a huge mess, because the gun that was used was Tasha's. Instead of Angela turning the St. Patrick's in, she decided to help them by deleting the ballistics report, which would have been traced back to Tasha's gun. But the whole situation was a complete mess because law enforcement was still questioning Tasha, they were still on the case, and they had to do something before either Tasha or Tariq got caught. In the meantime, Kanan took Tariq under his wing. We saw them hanging around together a lot more, taking Tariq to the hood, taking him to business deals with Vincent Ragney and a lot more. They built quite a bit of a bond, even though Tariq knew that Kanan killed Sean. The fact that Kanan was accepting Tariq for who he wanted to be, because Kanan saw a lot of his younger self in Tariq, and because Kanan was teaching him the game that Ghost refused to teach, we saw them getting a lot closer. However, Tasha gave him a big decision.
Tariq, it's either me or Kanan.
With law enforcement closing in, even with Angela and Tasha working together, Tariq had to choose between Tasha and Kanan. Now at the time, back in 2020, this is what 50 Cent said on Kanan's death. The death of Kanan at this point, it ramps up everything. The pace of the next 2 shows, which I think he means by episodes, is a lot more because everybody responds to the betrayal of Kanan, and his death leaves a big gap for Tommy and Ghost, where they don't trust each other. So, at that point in the storyline, Kanan's death was a huge moment in the storyline, because it left more trust issues between Tommy and Ghost, and in the end, Tommy actually taking a shot on Ghost which actually hit Angela. Tasha also made the plan behind Ghost back, and Kanan already created a hell of a lot of damage when it came to Tariq. Everything completely spiraled out of control. There was lie on top of lie, and the other lingering threats and snakes like Dre still lingering around looking to take advantage of the situation. But that's a brief overview of the ending of Season 5 and Kanan Stark's death. Now, what if Corny Kem stuck to her original plan? What if 50 Cent never spoke up at the time and let them run with the original idea of killing Ghost? What if they did actually kill Ghost towards the end of Season 5? How would that have changed the landscape of Season 6? Now, we do first have to ask the question, if Ghost was going to be killed off in Season 5, then who pulls the trigger? Who hatches the plan? Who's capable of going to that extent to getting rid of the great James St. Patrick, aka Ghost? Do they bring Tariq's story arc forward from Season 6 and have him kill Ghost? Or would they have gone down a different route and have it be, say, Kanan Stark? I think the only person who would have been capable of that level of manipulation, that level of meticulous planning, and something that he's always wanted to do ever since he went to prison, is Kanan Stark. His history with Ghost was built on betrayal. You've got the connection between the two that dates all the way back to their childhood. You've got Kanan weaving between Jason Michich, Ghost, and Tommy, with him always thinking in the back of his mind, him taking Ghost out at the end.
Tommy and Ghost will take each other out.
Rather than telling Jason Michich that Tommy and Ghost will take themselves out, he goes and does it himself, maybe even with the help of Tariq by manipulating him even further against Ghost. So I do think if they were to kill Ghost in Season 5, it would have had to be at the hands of Kanan Stark, who was the mastermind behind it. Now, as I mentioned before, that probably would have put him in the good books of Jason Michich. You can probably assume that he'd also take over the drug trade in Queens. He's finally got his hands back on his kingdom. So not only has he taken Tommy's brother and best friend away, he's also taken Tommy's business at the same time. And so next up we have to consider Tommy Egan's thought process, especially if Kanan was the main antagonist for Season 6. His alliance with Jason Michich and the Sebs would have probably made him practically untouchable, as well as still probably twisting and manipulating Tariq, but we're going to get to that in just a moment. One last thing with Kanan before we move over to Tommy. If Kanan was alive in Season 6, we probably would never have seen this scene.
He has no known surviving next of kin. His son Sean was murdered and that crime was never solved.
So, I do wonder if they kill Ghost if Kanan was still alive in Season 6. Could they have also had a subplot away from the main storyline going into Kanan's family a bit more? Could Rock have genuinely been alive in the Power timeline? Marvin being in prison reacting to Jukebox's death? Or Uncle Lou? I guess in hindsight, it kind of is easy to say at this moment in time because we've now seen 4 seasons of Raising Kanan. We've been introduced to the Thomases. At the time, I'm not sure whether they were probably thinking that far ahead. But moving on. With Tommy, he'd end up heartbroken over Ghost's death, that's for sure. We saw his reaction towards the end of Force, and that's what we probably would have seen in Season 6. But with Kanan being behind Ghost's death instead, it would have set up Season 6 as Kanan vs Tommy Egan. Tommy looking for revenge, focus on breaking Kanan's empire under Jason Michich, and having to make the moves that Ghost would have made. He would have had to really step up and start seeing the chessboard how Ghost would have seen it, because the enemy on the other side of the board, he was a very good damn chess player.
He was my brother.
I think at first he probably would have been a little more volatile, a little more emotional, full of grief. I think he probably would have needed a good support network around him, and in essence, a dream team. The likes of Lakeisha, Tasha, Joe Proctor, and even Angela Valdez. You'd then have to think about Joe Proctor and Angela surviving with a role reversal.
He's loving this shit, you know that, Tasha. That I'm living with this. That the woman I love is gone.
In the original Season 6 opener, Angela was confirmed dead from a gunshot wound from Tommy Egan. Ghost was then, let's just say, grieving her loss. But in an alternate reality, Angela survives and Ghost's death flips the dynamic.
What you mean by eliminate? What you asking me to do? You got the devil inside. I thought you were one of the good guys.
I was.
So she's already shifted in terms of being a law-abiding prosecutor, and you can probably see her working alongside Tommy, Tasha, and also Joe Proctor to bring down Kanan. You've got Tommy street knowledge along with Lakeisha and Tasha. You still got your lawyer in terms of Joe Proctor, and then you've got Angela Valdez's legal experience and her insider knowledge of the ins and outs of the office she used to work in. Her and Proctor even working together, using their connections, accessing system files they shouldn't be, manipulating evidence and breaking the law. That's something Tommy would have definitely needed. And Angela and Joe Proctor surviving would have definitely opened a lot more doors in terms of maybe Power Book 2 Ghost. Or maybe they would have been killed off in Season 6 in a different way. But the door would have definitely been open for them to kind of carry on. but we're going to get to Power Book 2 Ghost in just a moment. But eventually you can see Tommy Egan getting his shit together and wanting to do right by Ghost and get revenge. Although having said that, I do think there is one person who I do think he would eventually need in that team, and that's Tariq St. Patrick. Now with Tariq, I do think this would have probably started to get a little complex. Would they have gone down the route of maybe Tariq helping Kanan get rid of Ghost? Does Kanan continue to manipulate and use Tariq? I do think he'd probably be in the middle of this tug of war between Kanan, Tommy and Tasha. I do think that is the route that Kanan would have most likely taken. The way to really hurt Ghost and the St. Patricks is by turning Tariq against them, being the devil on Tariq's shoulder, and really bringing him on in the streets, giving him a real lesson and teaching him the game, teaching him how to fight. We've all been saying for a number of years during Book 2 Ghost, this Tariq got punched and kicked around way too much. When he went through a few of these beatings back in Book 2 Ghost, he should have said, enough is enough, I definitely need to learn how to throw some hands. But if Kanan was his mentor back in Season 6 of Power, I'm sure that would have definitely happened. However, I do think eventually the key plot point and a twist would have also involved Tariq. Tariq holding the key to bringing down Kanan, using Kanan's trust against him. Season 6 climax could have probably been where Tariq teams up with Tommy, using his insider knowledge of Kanan and his organization, knowing how Kanan works, knowing his routine. In essence, maybe flipping the script on him in a manner that maybe resembled a story from Kanan's childhood. I do think Tariq would have probably been at the center of it all, because he'd be the one who'd be closest to Kanan. He would have been the one who Kanan would drop his guard around. Season 6 would have then probably ended with Kanan's death. Now you've also got the narrative and storylines like the Who Shot Ghost narrative in the final 5 episodes, which also wouldn't have been there. They would have had to replace it with something else, maybe just a regular final season with 10 episodes. The ending of Season 6 would have been very different, to then set up what comes after in the World of Power with the spin-offs. So let's move on to how Ghost's death in Season 5 would have then caused a ripple effect on the entire Power universe. Now, with Power Book 3 raising Kanan, there probably wouldn't have been much change. That story could, I guess, carry on as usual. The only thing I would say is, going back to my point of how they probably could have implemented more backstory in Season 6 with Kanan's family, they could have left a lot of Easter eggs and breadcrumbs. Although in a way I'm also kind of glad they didn't, because if you saw Marvin in jail in say Season 6 of Power, we'd be watching Raising Kanan knowing his outcome, but I'm sure they probably would have still given us a bit more backstory from the older Kanan's point of view. Now with the other 2 spin-offs, the impact that it would have had on Power Book 2 Ghost would have been absolutely huge. I do think Tariq would have been a lot wiser, a lot tougher. Maybe he wouldn't have been at Stansfield, but more in the streets. I think that probably would have had a huge impact on Power Book 2 Ghost and Tariq's character as a whole. You could definitely see a new cast like the Tejadas, but rather than Tariq getting punked around by characters like Kane and the Guaps, Tariq could have started to really show what he's capable of, what he learned from Kanan, what he learned from Ghost, Tommy, Dre and Tasha, still having to come up against formidable characters like Mecha, where he would have made Tariq really work. Working under characters like Mecha would have been tough, but at the same time a huge learning curve. He may have learned from the likes of Kanan, but the game would have been different. There's new players in town, a new connect. There's no Kanan, no Tasha. Tommy's gone to Chicago. He's having to navigate the streets on his own, and does he have what it takes to kind of get the better of a connect like Mecha? I think Power Book 2 Ghost would have had a very big shift towards the streets if that was the case. Now with Tommy, I think with Ghost dead and everything that probably would have transpired in Season 6 with the war with Kanan, once that was done, I think he probably still would have left. I think he probably would have thought to himself what's left for him in New York. Even if they didn't kill Lakeisha, maybe he leaves New York with Cash and also Lakeisha. He wouldn't really have much left in New York. I do think him and Tariq's relationship at that moment would have also been quite strained, and I do think they'd probably end up going their separate ways anyway. Now this is me just kind of literally just brushing over a potential alternate Season 6 based on Ghost's death happening in Season 5. So if this video does kind of get enough likes, or who knows, I may get tempted into making a proper Power What If Season 6, depending on how many of you guys really want it. But let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. How do you guys think Power Season 6 and the World of Power would have looked like had Ghost been killed off at the end of Power Season 5?